I wanted to share with you guys something that I've been looking at in Psalm 132, and I feel like it flows into that, what he was just talking about. So I know, we've been on this journey of like learning, really how to build this altar to the Lord and establish a place for his presence. And so that's what we've begun to do really this year, is really just press into this, like building a place for the presence of the Lord to dwell. So I've been studying this Psalm 132, and I'm going to read it through, and then I specifically want to look at verses 13 through 18. And I just want to give some quick things, just some pieces that I've pulled out here from this that I feel like is just really relevant to us and where we are. So let's start here. Psalm 132. It says, and I'm kind of just going to talk about it a little bit as I go, but I really want to hone in on the end. So it says, "O Lord, remember David and all the hardships he endured." So they obviously think that Solomon was the one that wrote this. I mean, it's kind of divided, either David or Solomon, but they really believe, a lot of scholars believe that Solomon was the one that wrote this. And I love this, that he writes, like, David did endure hardships, right? And he's like, and he just cries out, like, God, remember David's hardship. He swore an oath to the Lord and made a vow to the mighty one of Jacob. Like, this vow, you guys, changed history. Like, David made a vow that he would not give himself rest until he established a resting place for the Lord. It says, "I will not enter my house or go to my bed. I will allow no sleep to my eyes, no slumber to my eyelids, till I find a place for the Lord, a dwelling for the mighty one of Jacob." We heard it in Ephrathah, which I looked that up, and it actually means, it's another word for Bethlehem. We came upon it in the fields of Jar, which is where the ark remained for 20 years. Let us go to his dwelling place. Let us worship at his footstool. Arise, O Lord, and come to your resting place, you and the ark of your might. May your priests be clothed with righteousness. May your saints sing for joy. For the sake of David, your servant, do not reject your anointed one. The Lord swore on an oath to David. So David makes an oath with God, but here we see the Lord make an oath with David. The Lord swore an oath to David, a sure oath that he will not revoke. One of your own descendants I will place on your throne. If your sons keep my covenant and the statutes I teach them, then their sons will sit on your throne forever and ever. And this is where I really want to focus tonight. For the Lord has chosen Zion. He has desired it for his dwelling. This is my resting place forever and ever. Here I will sit enthroned, for I have desired it. I will bless her with abundant provisions. Her poor will I satisfy with food. I will clothe her priests with salvation, and her saints will ever sing for joy. Here I will make a horn grow for David and set up a lamp for my anointed one. I will clothe his enemies with shame, but the crown of his head will be resplendent. I love that. And so I want to start right here, that as we talk about this, like establishing day and night prayer, and as we begin to build this place for God's presence to dwell, like that's what we're doing here. Like, we don't just come for something to do, right, to LHOP. Like, we come to establish a place for his presence. And we believe that this is going to carry city weight. Like, we believe that this is going to be a place where the city can come, right? Like, this is going to become a city prayer room, not just an LHOP prayer room for our little community. And so we literally, like, God looks to and fro upon the earth, finding a place for his spirit to dwell. And this is what we want to do here. Like, this is who we are. Like, we are people who are establishing a place for the presence of God, just like David. Like, God's like, don't give me any rest, right? Like, day and night and day, cry out to me. Like, I don't want any rest. Like, I want you to be people who cry out to me so that my presence could be established. And he wants to do that in us, but he also wants to do that in us as a community, and he also wants to do that in our city. So I believe this is kind of a threefold. And so I want to look at this right here, starting at the beginning of verse 13. For the Lord has chosen Zion. He has desired it for his dwelling. So right here, let's go down to verse 14. That this is my resting place forever and ever. And so right here we see God is looking for a resting place, just like what I said, where his presence can rest. And listen, you guys, when we create an atmosphere for his presence to rest and dwell, the enemy cannot rest there. Like, when we become a place for his dwelling and a place for his presence to dwell here, like, there is no place for the enemy, right? And so he's looking for that, like, create a place for my presence to rest. And so we get to do that personally, like in our own lives, but we also get to do that corporately, and we get to do that for a city. And I've talked with you guys about this before, but the Lord does this in order. Like, first it starts in us. Like, we become the very dwelling place of God in our own personal lives. It's just like what Dawn was saying tonight, that it starts in the secret place, that we become the very dwelling of the presence of God. Because if it doesn't first start in us, then we can't do this corporately, because when we come together, we have nothing to bring, right? Like, we come empty because we aren't in the secret place with the Lord. And so it starts with us, and then corporately we come together and we ascend to that hill, just like I said. And then, you guys, we get to, just like we do in the prayer room and on Tuesday nights, we get to establish a resting place. Like, you guys, Tuesday night was so beautiful. Like, we got to pray in the parking lot with Compassionate Hands, which I believe is really a city hub. And we got to ascend together for our city. Like, we got to cry out for our city, for the afflicted, like the addicted, right? Like, we got to do that for a city. And so I believe that God is establishing a resting place personally, corporately, and for our city. Okay? So I want to look at the next piece right here, which is still the end of verse 14, that right here he says, here I will sit enthroned, for I have desired it. And this is a picture of lordship, that when he sits on his throne, that everything else is under his feet. So these are the things that when we establish a place for his presence, these are the things that we will see. So there's a resting place for the Lord. Next, it's lordship. Like, we establish him on his throne, and we command everything else to come under the throne of Jesus. And just like I said, we do that personally, corporately, and for a city. That when we enthrone him, nothing else gets to take that place. So that means every idol, every high place has to come down and bow to the feet of Jesus, So we're establishing his lordship, that when we create a place for his dwelling, a resting place, like verse 14 says, that we establish his lordship, right? He has to be Lord. He has to be established on the throne. No one else or nothing else gets to have that place. And so then we move into 15, and it says, I will bless her with abundant provision. So you guys, when we establish a resting place, there's abundant provision in the journey. Like not just getting by, not just barely making it. Like there is abundant provision, you guys, like more than enough. He has more than we need. So when we establish a place for his presence, there is no lack. There is no lack in the kingdom, but there is abundance, an abundance in his presence. And then we go on to 16, that I will clothe her priests with salvation, and her saints will ever sing for joy. So right here it says, I will clothe her priests with salvation. So when we establish a place for his presence, there will be salvation. That we're all priests in this room. And there will be salvation in his presence. That we get to release salvation to others. That we get to bring life, you guys, kingdom life. And so the Lord really challenged me this week on this, because the Lord was like, when we establish a place for his presence, you guys, how many are getting saved? Like, is there truly salvation happening? Like, are there people that their lives are being transformed? Like, how many people are coming to the Lord? And that's a good measure of his presence, because in his presence, there's salvation, you guys. And so the Lord just really hit hard with this week, that when's the last time we led somebody to the Lord? Like, when's the last time there was new salvation? So his presence, when we establish his presence, the priest of the Lord will bring salvation, okay? And the next part of this verse is that there will be joy, right? That when his presence is established, that the saints will sing with joy. That there's a release of joy and celebration. And this joy and celebration, it lifts depression. It lifts suicide. Like, you guys, when we come in and establish a place for his presence, a supernatural joy is released. And there is no room for depression, no room for suicide. Like, there is no room in his presence for this stuff. And so we have to ask ourselves, if this stuff is operating, are we truly establishing a place for his presence? That there is fullness of joy when there's a resting place for the Lord, okay? So the next one here is verse 17. Here I will make a horn grow for David. And this horn here represents strength and power. That there will be strength and power and stamina in the battle. And it's interesting that the Lord highlighted this to me this week, that it says, I will make a horn grow for David. So I believe that this is a picture that in the battle, we grow in strength and victory with every battle. That it's like this horn, he's like, I'm going to cause the horn to grow. So it's like in the battle is where the strength comes, that he literally causes this horn for David to grow, which represents power and stamina. That in the battle, you guys, we're going to be strengthened with power. That it's in the battle that we're strengthened. Like, we have to have the battles to be strengthened, you guys. Like, we have to have those hardships to be strengthened. Like, I just believe that he uses that. And in the battle, he will provide the horn, which is the strength and the victory that we need. And the next part is, I will set up a lamp for my anointed one. And I believe this represents prophetic vision, that in the presence of the Lord, there is prophetic vision, that when we establish an atmosphere of prayer and worship, that prophetic revelation comes, that we begin to see with his eyes and hear with his ears. And I believe, like many of you come in on Thursday night and say, I had this dream, or I saw this vision. And you guys, I truly believe it's a result. It's a result of a place of, because we've established a place for his presence. And when we do that, it says, I will set a lamp for my anointed one. And I believe that represents prophetic vision, that he will give revelation. He'll give insight, you guys, when we establish this place for his presence. He gives us vision to walk this out. And lastly here it says, I will clothe his enemies with shame, which I looked this word shame up, and it means confusion. So he will cause confusion on our enemies and put a crown on our head, which represents divine victory. And this, I believe, you guys, is so important, that there is authority and there is victory in the presence of the Lord. And so he wants us to know that, you guys, that when we establish a place for his presence and for his presence to dwell, like, these are the things that we will begin to see, that we will begin to see his lordship, abundant provision, salvation, joy, you guys, celebration, strength and victory in the battle, that we will have prophetic vision, prophetic revelation, and he will give us victory over our enemies and cause confusion for our enemies. And so I just wanted to, like, that's what we're doing, you guys, as we establish this dwelling place. And I believe that we're learning what that looks like together. Like, this was a beautiful picture tonight that we got to do that together. Like, every week we're coming together and we're establishing, we're saying, God, like, we want you here. Like, we want your presence here in our lives, in this community, in our city. And you guys, I promise we are going to see the fulfillment of the Lord. The Lord is doing so much in us personally and corporately and in our city. And we are going to see things that we have never seen before. And I just feel like the Lord says, keep building, keep establishing a resting place for my presence to dwell. And I promise we will see answers and we will see the fulfillment of the Lord.